Joining us, he's a market master of the day, CEO at Marathon Trends PMS. He's with us here in our studios. Atul, great to have you with us here.
Thanks.
Season's greetings, and I'm surprised you're not globe-trotting somewhere at some
away
fancy destination.
Or holidaying
You're here
at a...
with us.
Too much traffic everywhere. I mean, whether it's the hills of Manali or it's Goa or it's Bandra.
Even in the air, right?
There's too much traffic. I think this is a week it's best to be at home. In fact, I dread to even go around my house because over the weekend I had to just go to a friend's house in the same suburb.
Yeah.
And it took me 1.5 hours to get back home. So you can imagine.
Zoom, I think Zoom celebrations, that's what you have to do in the last
Lata
week.
was in Goa, and she was telling us yesterday at she was at the Goa airport. Absolute madness and chaos.
Absolutely.
With flights.
So you need a holiday after a holiday like this.
But, and maybe that explains the excitement in the market, because people like you, and I'm sure there are others, who have not chosen to stay away. The screen's been looking exceedingly good. And Atul, I remember all our conversations, Diwali and even before that, you made the point that this is looking like a strong trend and there's no reason to get away from that. And it's playing out absolutely as per that script. What next? 2024.
Yeah, I mean, so what next is the question. Every prediction you make on the market has 3 stages. The first is laughter, second is acceptance, and third is what next. So last year when I predicted a bull market in 21,500 or whatever, immediately the market fell 1,000 points. The whole Adani thing happened, 17.5 to 16.5. And everyone were laughing at me. So when a lot of people laugh at you, you feel very good because there's disbelief. Then it crossed 19,000 and then it was acceptance. And now the question is, what next?
If you don't accept it, there's a 4th stage. It's called grief.
So when people say, what next, you shouldn't give targets.
Okay, no targets, but let me make it qualitative. Let me sort of, in the sense of how do you approach it? And it's the same sectors that you've been speaking about, right? That whole capital goods space, PSU space. The same narrative continues. And therefore, it's causing maybe a sense of disbelief to an extent.
Yeah, so I think that the mindset of most people is that, things have gone up. So they are like skeptical, oh, it's already gone up too much. Now, when I look at global markets, etc., what I think is that the global bull run in equities is just starting. If you start seeing, especially I think, look at the US, etc., you'll find that these markets are just now pushing towards lifetime highs. And if you take a step back and you realize that what is the genesis of all these things that drives, as I said, this is the mothership, is where US 10-year bond yields are. We had almost pipped 5, and you'll find that today we are just below 4. So I feel that bond yields are heading lower to around 3.3, and this whole global narrative of inflation will cool off. So to say, what was the perfect Goldilocks scenario where inflation would cool off and growth wouldn't, get thrown into a recession basket. I do think that the year is going to be dominated by global markets. So when I see whether it's S&P or it's the Dow Jones Industrial or the NASDAQ, I see almost an 18 to 20% upside from here.
Wow, and that's after such a strong year already. Talk about...
So actually, Surbhi, they haven't had a very good year last year. I mean, for them, it's been a year of fall and recovery. So that's why I said the bull market is actually starting there. And I feel that that is going to be very, very positive because for India, obviously, we've been probably the first market to break out to lifetime highs. In fact, very few markets are still at lifetime highs, but India is the first to break out. So I think in a scenario where global markets, I feel, have 18 to 20% upside, I don't think that India is going to lag in a big way. The question is, will we relatively underperform, outperform? Have we front-ended it? Have we already run up in I think these are questions that we will, I think, have to struggle with during the year. But I do think that we are heading into a year which is going to see a very good upside in global markets. And what's going to change in India is that last year was all domestic, which is your domestic flows, SIP flows. Already December is showing it. But I feel that this year, the coming year, will be the largest FII flows the country has ever seen. So what we are going to have is, of course, the domestic money, which is steady and through SIPs coming. And you will see a very large flow of FII money. I mean, they have sold at 17, 18, not that they did not like India. I mean, they also are smart guys, but it's the way they are structured, the bond yields, cost of capital, they have various permutation combinations. And as bond yields are going down, I won't be surprised if you see a tsunami of FII flows in India.
Atul's answer is reminding me of a Bollywood song. Abhi to party shuru hui hai.
No, I mean, absolutely. Actually, in the US, for example, Atul, if you take we talk about S&P and NASDAQ having done 30% this year, it's the 7 stocks. if you with the AI stocks, the AI frenzy which
Yeah,
started.
the Super 7.
So it's interestingly, if you look at the equal weighted index, it
Right.
is actually the S&P or the Nasdaq. It is actually flat. It may have gone up a few percentage points now, 3-4%.
That's
it's
right.
not 30%. It's 3-4%.
That's right. That's
but the
right.
index is what it is. I mean,
That's right.
it's just that 7 stocks have an outsized impact.
I think that's very relevant. And for me, what I feel is the most interesting thing is that actually the opportunity that's happening. Like I am looking at something like the Russell 2000, which is the small cap index, which if you look at it is not near 52-week highs, but nearer to 52-week lows.
Yeah.
But the way if the front end of the market does it, I have a feeling that there's going to be a very big alpha that is going to be created in that space. And if you look at the US, I mean, just to take off from where you look, if you do an analysis that comes to sectors and themes, because beyond markets, that's the next question. The fact is that the S&P 500 is just about 1% or so from lifetime highs. The NASDAQ is a fair bit away, 7 to 8%. But the Dow Jones Industrial has made a lifetime high. And it is a good few percent higher than that. So what I'm seeing is that not only is a bull market that I feel will happen globally and especially in the US, but what I think is that industrials will lead it. So yes, the Super 7 are doing well. That's driving the S&P, etc. But I have a feeling that if you look beyond that, a lot of industrial stocks, a lot of the old economy stocks are actually also at lifetime highs. And I think that the year is going to belong to the old economy. It's going to, be dominated by the industrials rather than just the Fab 7.
From the virtual to the physical.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I guess, there are things, alteration is a reality of life here. In our markets, what has not done well for 10 years, very often.
Absolutely.
Look at PSUs.
Yeah.
I mean, every guy had sworn. It was like almost, it was a written
much.
charter that we will not buy PSUs because people have burned their fingers over 10, 20 years. And if you look at the last year and this year, it's been the most stellar pocket that there is. So very often markets have a way of alternating, and where everyone is consensus bullishness actually disappoints, and where under ownership is there, that is what does well. So I have a feeling that even the US, that sort of upside is going to be led by industrials. And for my bet would be in the Dow Jones Industrials or the Russell 2000 rather than the NASDAQ.
Let's talk about back home. Right? In India, also industrials, PSUs have done well. And the narrative was there is an improvement in fundamentals, plus there is value. Valuations are fairly reasonable.
Sure.
But now the question is, will the fundamentals keep improving to the extent of re-rating that we should have in a bull market? If the stocks have to double, triple from here on, you need to see a tangible, a material improvement in fundamentals.
Sure.
Can that take place? Can the fundamentals move in step with the valuation re-rating for a bull market?
See, honestly, that only time will tell in terms of execution. But if you look at two sectors, which I look at it, the defense, if you see the kind of order flows, there's been a lot of talk of indigenous defense work, but generally the order flows are coming. Now, how execution happens is a work in progress, and that we'll get a sense over time. But if you see the size of opportunity and the kind of order flows that are happening, I think it's massive. Second area, which I find very fascinating, and we don't have a sector per se, is railways. If you see the kind of work that is happening in railways, I think it's phenomenal. And for that, you must actually travel intercity by train. And you'll realize that it's actually better than flying an aircraft. If you fly some of the Tejas or, the Vande Bharat trains, etc. So there's a qualitative shift that has happened in railways. So what we are seeing is that not only is the size of opportunity big, I think the execution is improving. And then obviously the valuations were very, very cheap. So I feel that that's been a phenomenal story. The only thing is that it teaches you never say never in this market, because what people thought they will never ever touch has actually been the best performer.
Yeah.
So, and I take your railway point entirely. It took me 7 hours to come from Delhi to Bombay.
Right.
Well, 7 to 8 hours. So I
Right.
think trains are probably going to be a better mode of
Especially if
transport.
you're doing
soon enough.
shorter distance, like you're doing some place in Gujarat or in Maharashtra,
Yeah.
with flying time, the amount of check-in time and the mess. And I mean,
Exactly.
like,
The waiting and the
and the
lines.
experience.
Places like Surat, etc. are case in point. I mean, very convenient.
I think the experience itself is far superior to flying in a plane, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Experience where you're holding the railway stocks or traveling in the train. I think the experience has improved.
Definitely.
But, so, Atul, I think the question for 24 is that if the same themes will continue, and 23 gave us these themes, PSUs, defense, industrials, I
Right.
think people feel a sense of complacency, saying, oh God, I'm not looking at a new idea. Am I missing something? Should I be looking at EVs? Should I go back to FMCG because FMCG is underperformed this year? The human mind tends to constantly look to do more. Otherwise, you're feeling you're not doing enough to
Certainly.
earn your money, right?
Absolutely.
So what do you say to that conundrum that I think many would be facing as we step into the new year?
See, I'm a trend follower. That's my style of investing. And as the line goes, the trend is your friend
Yeah.
until the end when it bends. So the fact is that if the trend is playing out, the need to do something all the time, compulsive action. See, in a bull market like this, someday sector A will move, sometimes sector B will move. But at the end of the day, you can't be churning your portfolio every week or every month. The important thing is for you to realize that what are the larger themes and trends. And you will have some weeks of underperformance, some week of outperformance. But I have noticed that in the end of the journey, however long it is, no one knows the ending. But the important part is that if you've got sectors and themes which show leadership and you have conviction, it's best to hold on to it. The need for activity is something which is more your own limitations. But even sitting, I have seen that the biggest wealth creation, as they always say, is in sitting. So if you've got themes which you believe in, I believe industrials is the theme that is going to lead. I would sit through it patiently.
So sit back and enjoy the ride.
Absolutely. Atul, thank you so much for coming down to our
Thanks
studios.
for having
Great
me.
chat as always. Seasons readings and all the best to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much. Well.